few years back, one of those Facebook status update things that went around to everybody that was forwarded where you challenged someone else was called 15 movies that will always be with you. So I was challenged a few years back to make a list of 15 movies that weren't necessarily my favorites, not necessarily that I thought were the best, but movies that just defined some element of how I view movies. And I started to write mine. I actually made the list I'm about to give you 2-3 years ago. I just never finished it because I tend to be a long-winded writer, and so I never completed it. So I thought I would just make a video, and I'm actually going to send it to that person on Facebook after this. So here are the 15 movies that will always be with me. Not my favorites, not the best, but movies that define something about me. Here we go. Number 15 is True Lies. This is a great James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie, and the reason it's such a big deal to me is I believe it's the first rated R movie I ever saw in the theater, and the first movie I ever saw at a drive-in theater. We went to a double feature, and one side was like back-to-back, like The Lion King and then some other animated movie. And on the other side was like The Mask followed by True Lies, I think. I don't remember what it was, but it was something like that. All I remember is I watched The Lion King followed by True Lies, and I just, 20 years later, I still remember it to this day, and it's a movie I love. It's one of the best action movies ever made. Great movie, very rewatchable, and the first rated R movie I saw in the theater. Number 14, Lethal Weapon 1 and 2. I'm just cheating a little bit right there. This is one of those movies that I saw it at Blockbuster when I was really young, and I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. And then I remember being in the second grade on a flag football team, and one of the other 8-year-olds had seen Lethal Weapon 2, and he was like, there's this scene where a guy has a nail gun and he's shooting guys in the head, and I thought that sounded like the coolest thing ever as an 8-year-old, not knowing that it would freak me out when I actually saw it. And so I was so excited to finally see this movie someday. I don't remember when I first saw it. I believe I saw Lethal Weapon 2 before I saw Lethal Weapon 1, and I've loved the Lethal Weapon movies ever since. Mel Gibson's one of my favorite actors. This is my favorite buddy cop series, and 1 and 2 are my two favorite buddy cop movies. Number 13, Terminator 2. This is one of the all-time great movies of all time. Not just a great sci-fi, not just great action, just a great movie all around. I remember first seeing it at a family reunion when I was like 10 years old. My mom's cousin was like, yeah, it's a great movie. He'll love it. It's funny. It's dark. There's action. It'll be great. He's totally old enough. I'm not sure if I was old enough. I kind of freaked out whenever Arnold Schwarzenegger went and ripped all of the skin off of his hand. But I loved it ever since. And I remember just that first time I saw it being like, this is the coolest movie I've ever seen. And I've loved it ever since. Rewatch it all the time. Number 12 on this list is Taken. These movies aren't necessarily in a specific order, otherwise Taken would probably be number 15. But this is probably the schlockiest movie on the list, but it's a movie that I just love and could rewatch like on a daily basis. And then I had kids and it was like, oh, I can definitely watch this. And I had a daughter and then it was like, I need to watch this every day and I need to start training to get ready for when something happens. And so it's just one of those movies that kind of feeds into that revenge side that some of us guys have, that we always want to be able to take care of the people we love and rescue them, and this movie just feeds off of that entirely. It's just purely giving into that. Not so much the sequels, though. They do not live up to this one. Number 11 is Aliens. It's not an accident that this is the third time that James Cameron has appeared on this list. So this is a master film on how to ratchet up tension as a movie goes along. And as it keeps going, it gets more and more tense as more and more layers of the action unfold, as the threat gets bigger and better and changes and gets more personal. And as you're watching it, that they have a strong female character that doesn't act like a man. It's not that they have an androgynous character that's a female. It's a very feminine person with a very maternal side to her that's a strong character that will save the people that she cares about. And so this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love it, and that's why Alien 3 is actually the movie I hate the most in the entire world. Number 10 on our list is Back to the Future. I first saw this movie in, I believe, 1988 at a friend's house, and it was like the first movie I remember watching and knowing that I was watching something for like teenagers, and when I was 7 years old or however old I was, being like, ooh, I'm getting to watch like a movie for older kids. And I enjoyed it then. I still enjoy it to this day. It's one of the first movies where I remember anticipating and looking forward to the sequel and being like, I can't wait until that comes out. And I've enjoyed the whole trilogy almost my entire life that I can remember. Number 9 on our list is Superman the movie, as well as Superman 2. It's hard to remember a day when superhero movies weren't just commonplace, where one came out every 3 months or so. But back in the 80s and 90s when I grew up, there weren't very many at all. You had Batman and you had Superman, and that was about it. And really, even by the time I was old enough to remember stuff, the Superman movies are already done. But so I rewatched my VHS tape that we'd recorded of Superman the movie and Superman 2 off of TV, and I rewatched that all of the time. And we actually had a version of it back in the 80s. What they would do is they would kind of, the way we have deleted scenes now on DVDs and Blu-rays, during cuts that they'd put on TV, sometimes they would just cram those back into the movies, and you'd see kind of the director's cut, kind of just like this weird mishmash thing. And so the version that we had on TV had extra footage in it, and eventually that tape died, or we lost it, or I got the DVD. And I remember watching it and being like, hey, where are those scenes I remember from my childhood? And then around the time the internet came around and they would tell the story behind some of this stuff, I realized that the VHS tape I had of it had this very unique special broadcast of it from the 80s that was super rare. And by then I'd lost the tape, so I couldn't show it off to the world or anything like that, unfortunately. But this movie, key part of my childhood. There's all kinds of pictures of me as a little kid wearing a Superman shirt with my red Superman cape, I love Superman. Number 8 on the list is Batman, Tim Burton's 1989 film. And so this is the first movie that I ever was excited about before it came out. At the time, my family was really into kind of collecting stuff. And so we actually collected all of the trading cards for the movie. You can see that. We have the full set of all of them, and clearly I still have them to this day, as well as the Batman Returns cards. But this is one of those movies that, once again, that point in time where I started being able to remember what I was watching, knowing I was watching something a little bit more mature, and my mom was like, all right, I think I'll let you watch this. And so as much as I can criticize the movie now for a few things here and there, I will always love this movie. It always have a special place in my heart for nostalgic reasons. Number 7 on the list is Bloodsport. This is the very first rated R movie I ever saw. I went to a friend's house right after my first grade year and slept over at his house, and he's like, let's watch Bloodsport. I'm like, that's a great idea. So we start watching Bloodsport around the time that a guy's leg gets broken and the bone sticks out. I kind of freaked out a little bit, but the movie's been burned into my brain ever since. I love it. It's a special place in my heart. Might not be great, but Van Damme does that windmill kick to a whole bunch of guys of different martial arts, so hey, it gets a pass. Number 6 is Rocky. Rocky Balboa is probably my favorite movie character of all time, just such a rich character, and I find it so cool that we've been able to track him from a movie that came out 40 years ago all the way up to the present, and actually see the character progress and see him develop as a person. And a great movie from 40 years ago, we got a great movie from like 9 months ago, and there's great stuff all in between. It's one of the neatest things in cinematic history, and it's a great character to get to do this with. That first movie kicked off an incredible franchise, and there's a reason that a lot of people consider it one of the greatest sports movies of all time. It's a great drama. It won Best Picture for a reason, and it holds up really well. Number 5 on our list is Jurassic Park. This is one of the greatest adventure films of all time, and it's a great story that just kind of builds, and it's so intriguing in the first hour as you kind of discover what's going on. Just the awe and wonder. That first scene where you see the dinosaurs is one of the great moments of awe and wonder in cinematic history. And as the movie develops, you go into this adventure that's thrilling and exciting and scary all at once, and just paced and so perfectly as it builds up so nicely. And you forget that like the first hour of it, the dinosaurs are contained because the movie is just so well crafted and entertaining even before the dinosaurs are loose. Great movie, and it's a perfect example of what you should do with special effects. See, they had a little bit of CGI and they had a little bit of practical effects, and they combine the two together, and you have a movie that's over 20 years old that looks better than so many current gigantic budgeted CGI fests. Because they knew what they could do and they knew what they couldn't do, and they meshed it perfectly into a movie that looks great over 20 years later. Number 4 on our list is Die Hard. This is the movie that I would say is the best action movie of all time. I remember growing up and seeing the video at the video store, and it has like Bruce Willis with like a cut on his head, and I think the poster for Pet Sematary is similar, so I thought Die Hard was a horror movie that was scary, and I didn't realize, no, it's a cool action movie. So I don't remember when I first saw Die Hard. It was almost certainly for the first time when I watched it on like TBS or TNT or something like that, so it was very forgettable. And then as I've gotten older, it's one of those movies that's become one of our Christmas favorites to watch every December as well as every few months, because we love to watch Die Hard because it's such a great action movie with a great villain. Everything about it is so nicely crafted. It's the type of movie that Hollywood needs to study and remember how to make, because Hollywood does not make movies like this anymore. Number 3 on the list is Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is the movie that I would argue is the greatest adventure film of all time. It's a movie that's almost 40 years old now, and it's still so exciting, so fun. The characters are so memorable. The dialogue is so quotable. There's all these little moments that just pop. And you think about like the chase scene where Indy's trying to get the Ark off the Jeep or off the truck, and it's one of the best chases and action sequences in film history, and it's all practical. You're all watching someone do something, and it's perfectly crafted. The music fits together with what's going on so perfectly that it makes for an exciting film. Yet you forget that the climax of this movie takes place like 10 minutes after the last action set piece. The climax is Indy tied to a stake and people's heads exploding, and still it's one of the most exciting movies of all time. And Hollywood, once again, has forgotten how to make movies like this, that the story is more interesting than just having a bunch of stuff and explosions on the screen. Once again, go back, look at Die Hard, look at Raiders of the Lost Ark. These are the greatest of all time, and they don't demand just kind of putting razzle-dazzle in our face. It's great storytelling where you care about the characters and you care about the consequences. Number 2 on my list is going to be Star Wars. If you haven't picked up from my videos, from the graphics behind me, from the posters I hang behind me, and what I like to talk about, I am a lifelong Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. I've watched all the movies, even the prequels, so many times I can't remember it. Even bad Star Wars is still a good time for me. I don't have to explain to you why I like Star Wars, because you love Star Wars too. So, for all the reasons you love it, I love it too. Even right now, I wish I could show you. I've shown it in other videos. Like, this camera is sitting on my BB-8's box, as well as 3 Star Wars books. That's what I'm using to hold my camera up to the level it's at. Because when I was looking around, I just needed to find things. Star Wars things were everywhere. That's how much Star Wars is a big part of my life. And I'm sure you love it too, so I don't have to sell you on this. Number 1 on my list, Star Trek. I'll just say generic Star Trek, because there's a lot of movies I could be talking about. I'll just say generic Star Trek. I grew up going to the conventions. Like, before Comic-Con was this big gigantic thing, there were Star Trek conventions, and I went to lots of them, saw lots of behind-the-scenes footage, saw lots of the cast talk live. I don't even remember all the people that I've seen live at these deals, because I've been to so many of them. I really need to make a list of that and talk to my sister. Hey, who did we go see? The funniest one is when I went to see William Shatner, who's incredible on stage, and through an accident, one of my buddies, actually the guy that challenged me to make this video, went in the exit, walked into like William Shatner's green room, and got brought up on stage at this Star Trek convention with, 5,000, 10,000 people in the room. And I was like, hey, that's my buddy on stage being interviewed by William Shatner. This is crazy. But I love Star Trek, just the adventure of it. I mean, almost every night I go to bed with a rerun of Star Trek on the TV. Even if I'm just going to go to bed, I put Star Trek on. I love it. So what are the 15 movies that will always be with you? Comment in the comment section. Tell me, what are those movies that define your life? Maybe you don't got 15, maybe you just got 5. Tell me those movies that kind of define who you are. Not your favorite, not the best, but the ones that just stand out to you, that are those milestones and markers in your life. If you like this video, please consider clicking that subscribe button and hearing me talk about movies. I don't want to just talk about movies, I want to talk with you about movies, so please join us in the comment section. Thank you for watching.